state and local perspectives, the ideas for JCPS student success. Louisville Forum has hosted discussions on a variety of topics related to JCPS. As recent as of April, we hosted Superintendent Dr. Marty Polio to share all the changes coming to JCPS. For those of us in attendance, you'll remember we spent quite a bit of time learning more about the future state plan that consisted of different provisions such as the changes in school start time, modifications to the student assignment plan, just to name a couple. Fast forward to August, and some of the big changes were on full display, notably on social media and primetime news about some of the busing issues that quickly led to a decision to cancel 6, for some, 7 days of school. The ripple effects of the disruptions and calls for all types of actions has led to a community and even statewide conversation about all of us coming together to better support JCPS students. And that's what we are here to accomplish today. A serious dialogue that highlights a variety of solutions and a shared understanding of the issues facing Kentucky's largest public school district. As I mentioned back in April, there is no denying the significance and impact of JCPS to our community, regardless if you have a child currently attending a school within the district. We all have a stake in JCPS. Responsible for 96,000 students, one of the top 5 largest employers in the city, and an annual budget of approximately $1.5 billion. 1 out of every 7 students in Kentucky attends JCPS. So where do we go from here? With us, we have 2 policy leaders, 1 state and 1 local. Jason Nemes was first elected to the Kentucky House of Representatives in 2016. He represents parts of Jefferson, Oldham, and Shelby counties. Aside from being a part-time legislator, Representative Nemes practiced law. He is a graduate of DuPont Manual High School, Western Kentucky University, and earned his JD from U of L. He and his wife, Leslie, have 3 children, Sam, Will, and Daniel. Dr. Corey Scholl was first elected to the Jefferson County Board of Education in 2018. He represents District 6, which consists of the central portion of the county from about Germantown down to Highview, including Newburgh and Okolona. I'm sure I'm missing a couple. But just to give you an idea of central Jefferson County, he's a pastor, the pastor of Burnett Avenue Baptist Church in Fern Creek. Dr. Scholl holds degrees from Fisk University and Louisville Presbyterian Seminary and received his doctoral degree from Colgate Rochester Crozer Divinity School. He's the father of Zoe and Harrison. So please join me and welcome our guests. So before we jump in, reminder, there's question slips at your table. Feel free to fill those out and then wave them. A board member will collect them. And so, Representative Nemes, I'll kick it over to you for opening remarks.
Thank you. I want to start off by just saying that how I'm honored to be here and thank the Louisville Forum for hosting this event. I want to thank Vincenzo's for hosting this event. This is, I think, one of the best places in Louisville, and I'm very honored to be on the panel with Dr. Scholl here today. And so, I want to start off by saying what this is not about. This is not about breaking down JCPS. I'm a JCPS graduate. My wife's a JCPS graduate. She teaches in middle school in JCPS. All 3 of my boys will graduate from JCPS. I love JCPS. I'm one of 6. We all went to JCPS schools, went to 5 different schools. One of them male. I'm a Manual grad, so we can be friends, I guess, for today, but hopefully on the football field we can beat Mel. So I love JCPS. I think all of us do up here. With approximately 95,000 of our students in JCPS, the most important thing in government, local or state government, is JCPS, and there is no close second. This is the most important thing that we have to do. And we are doing a lot of things very well, but so many of our students are not doing well. They're being left behind. And so what we've asked for is we've asked for 5 things in the legislature. First thing we've asked for is neighborhood schools. We passed a neighborhood schools bill in 2017. That was one of the reasons that this school board, and I want to commend Dr. Scholl and others, to move more toward neighborhood schools, which we've been arguing for 30 years. They have resides areas now, and if you live in those areas, then you are able to go to the school that's closest to you. But that's not every school in the county. We want to move more toward that. What does that mean for schools like Manual? Well, that's a conversation that we need to continue to have. But if you want to go to the school where you can walk outside and throw a baseball against the school, no matter where you live in the community, you should be able to go there. So Kevin Bratcher is going to lead our effort again to bring to pass a neighborhood schools bill. We've called for the study of splitting up JCPS, the study of it. I don't know what all the right answers are. I don't know anybody who does, but I know the wrong answer, and the wrong answer is the status quo. So we want to study whether splitting it up is appropriate. Indianapolis, for example, is a little larger than us, but they have 11 school districts. Other communities like us have many more school districts. And so I think one is probably not enough, but let's have that conversation. Let's have the study. If you do splitting, I want this to be very clear. If you do split it, it has to be racially fair, and it has to be economically fair. We don't want haves and have-nots. We don't want a black school district and a white school district. We want school districts that represent our areas. And you can draw maps that have these values in place. So we want to evaluate splitting up JCPS. We want extensive changes to the school board. Our school board is, I think, the fundamental problem that we have right now. 10 years ago, Adam Edlin, a Democrat, state auditor at the time, he had an audit where he called for significant changes to the school board. He said they were not competent to do the job then and oversee a $1.2 billion budget. The budget is now nearly doubled that, and changes have not been made. He called for expansion of the school board and other things, and none of those changes have been made. We're asking for a school choice amendment to enable all of our families to have the same opportunity that I have, which is if I want to, I can send my kids to private school, I can move out of the county, and like a lot of our teachers do, who I represent Oldham and Shelby County as well as Jefferson County. So we want a school choice amendment that would enable all of our families to have opportunities that they don't have today. And the final thing we've asked for, and we've asked for in this last week, is an audit. And this audit we want for it's a full management and financial audit, and we've asked for it for two reasons. One, it's 10 years later from the Adam Edlin audit, and where he found a number of eye-popping things. 43 cents on the dollar we're getting to the classroom then. 43 cents on the dollar. That was the worst among the peer districts that he studied. That's not enough. Is it better today? Is it good enough today? And I've looked at us versus the 21 school districts across the country that have 80,000 kids to 120,000 kids, and it's not much better today. 43 cents of the dollar going to the classroom where these young men and women learn is not enough. I understand you're going to have central staff, no doubt about that, but 43 cents is deplorable. It also found 367 administrators made over $100,000 a year. We have to have administrators, we have to pay them appropriately, but that was the highest of our peer districts. And as I said, he said that the board was incompetent to do its job then, and I would suggest that it's even more so today. So those are the 5 things that we're asking for to catapult JCPS forward. I want to end where I began, and that is this. There is nothing more. We'll disagree on a lot of the prescriptions, but we will agree on this. There's nothing more important to our community than strong JCPS, not only for the individual kid. We want the kid to be successful, but it's also important for our own entire community and Commonwealth that we have strong school districts, especially JCPS, because these young men and women at this table over here, they're going to be our mayor, they're going to be our governor, they're going to be the next David Jones, a big entrepreneur. We have to equip them to be that. And if we don't equip them to be that, then they will have, not them, they're here obviously very interested, but their colleagues will be condemned to a lifetime of dependency, and that's not what anybody wants. Thank you.
I would like to begin by thanking the Louisville Forum for this warm invitation to be here and to discuss with Representative Nemes something that is very important to me, and I'm sure it is important to you, which is strong, robust, excellent public schools. I'm a product of public schools. My 2 children attend public schools, Jefferson County public schools, and I believe that we all have a shared interest in ensuring that every single school in our district has the resources that it needs in order to provide the educational services to the young people of our community. As Representative Nemes stated, there was an audit done in 2010 by Adam Edlin, but I would like to underscore the fact that that was 3 superintendents ago. We now have a superintendent whose name is Dr. Marty Polio, who has done a tremendous job, along with the Board of Education, in helping to lead the district out of the many challenges that faced our district. You'll remember that just a few years ago, there was a pending corrective action plan, which was also attached to that audit. And Dr. Polio, along with this Board of Education, successfully avoided a state takeover of our district. And so I think that we should understand that many of the issues that were flagged by Mr. Edelin have been corrected. We often hear about a top-heavy structure. We often hear about a budget where more money is going to top-tier administrators than are going to the classrooms, when in fact, only 1% of JCPS's budget goes to top-tier administrators. And we understand the importance of having administrators to ensure that our school system is moving in the right direction. I do believe that under the leadership of Dr. Marty Polio and this Board of Education, that JCPS is moving in the right direction. Let me tell you some of the things that are happening at this time. We have 20 new buildings that are slated to be built over the next decade. Would you know that over the last 12 months, we have opened 4 new buildings. We have improved athletic facilities. We have updated some of our older school buildings. In addition to that, we have just rolled out a brand new curriculum that aligns every school with the same curriculum concerning literacy and mathematics, which puts us beyond the expected legislation that we expect to come from Frankfurt this year. Beyond that, we have been in communication with our community, actively seeking out stakeholders to hear their perspectives about the direction of JCPS and taking those opinions and those thoughts and actually using them to help pave the direction toward our future state. Our organizational structure has become much lighter than it has been in previous years. And then we have improved access, so choice. Every family has choice as to where their children will attend schools. We often hear about neighborhood schools, and I would remind you that in order to have neighborhood schools in Jefferson County, we will need to find a way to find $2 billion in order to build the number of schools necessary to have neighborhood schools. Now, possibly, our state government is willing to help us find those $2 billion, but judging by the fact that SEEK funding has increasingly decreased since 2008, I think that is highly, highly unlikely. And so again, thank you for having me today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Again, friendly reminder to fill out your question slips and raise them up. A board member will collect those. I have a couple of questions submitted by board members, and we'll go ahead and just jump right on in. Let's talk about sort of all, there's different levels of stakeholders, right? To support, to fund, to lead the vision of public education. And so I'll start with you, Representative Nemes. Like, can you share what kinds of conversations have occurred or will in the coming months before session between maybe legislative leadership, KDE, Governor Beshear, other types of education stakeholders? Like, can you maybe share any insights as to maybe some consensus building opportunities with these other types of education stakeholders?
Sure, thank you. I want to note that before I start, Dr. Scholl mentioned the state takeover. I want to remind everybody that the local legislators fought hard against state takeover. We didn't support state takeover. I fought with it. I was publicly against it, and that's not the answer to our problems. Our answers are more local. So the conversations that we're having. So we've asked for these 5 things that I've outlined. We've noted that we want communications to go around that. I know there's a lot of groups that are meeting with our education, the chairperson of the education committees. I think next Friday, the ACASA is going to come out with a number of recommendations on teacher retention, which is another big issue. And so I regularly, obviously, talk with people at the school board, and so those kinds of communications. And we would certainly invite more of a conversation than we've had before. We don't have enough of a conversation with our school board and Frankfurt leadership. I think Dr. Scholl was one of the ones that set up what I understand to be the first meeting that we've had, which was at the end of the session last year. And our thought was there that would continue, and I hope it does, to make sure that Frankfurt better understands the importance of JCPS and the importance of Louisville globally, not just JCPS. So we've started having conversations. We'll continue those conversations. They're important to have. And again, I want to note that what we've asked for, especially with respect to the splitting of the district, is to study the issue. We're not demanding that happen. I think it's the right thing. I don't know if it is. I believe it is, but I want to have all people of interest come to the table and figure out what they think is appropriate. And if we do split it, how do we split it in the right way? With respect to building schools, let's build them. No doubt about it. When I was talking to James Craig a couple years ago when we were talking about raising the nickel tax, I told him I'd put everything I had behind it. You guys went a different way. But if you're going to do the nickel tax that goes to facilities, which you still can do, then I'm all for that. But let's be clear about what our budget is today. JCPS's budget is over $2 billion. Five school terms away in 2018, it was $1.4 billion. It's increased significantly just over the last 5 years. We have the money to do what we need to do. We need to build more schools. We're doing it. I think it's offensive to me, and I think it is to all Louisvillians, that the newest high school is older than I am. And I was born in 1978. Ballard's the newest school, I think. James, is that right, in your district? And it was born before I was even born. I go to these other counties, and they have these, even very poor counties, and they have these beautiful facilities. So I understand how that works. We need to build more schools. There's no doubt about that. But our budget in JCPS is ample to the task. The priorities are not.
So Dr. Scholl, I'll sort of, same question, what kinds of conversations have you or the JCPS Board of Education engaging with other types of education leaders, with Governor Beshear, again, other stakeholders, and any sort of insights as to consensus building opportunities to move forward on?
So JCPS, Dr. Marty Polio, and this Board of Education is totally committed to collaborating with all stakeholders to ensure that we fashion a vision that includes every single student in Jefferson County and that invites everyone to the table to help us build the type of schools and the educational culture that will be benefiting of all of our students. It must be underscored that JCPS is a tremendously unique district. Our student population speaks over 140 different languages. We have 165 schools that have a variety of programs, magnet programs, Montessori programs, all types of programs and special efforts to ensure that we are engaging students based on their interest and based on their needs. Our size is our strength. Dividing the district will only ensure that we resegregate the district, that we limit options for students. There is no way that you can have a TAP school and a school for aerospace and a school like Manual and a school like Moore all in every district. Also, by splitting up the district, no offense, Representative Nemes, but it's terrible Republican policy because Republicans are supposed to be economically conservative. If you divide the district, you're going to need 4 or 5 superintendents, 4 or 5 athletic directors, 4 or 5. So you're going to multiply your administrative load. We're actually better as one united district, placing children at the center, really building and capitalizing on our diversity. And then finally, I'll say, if our friends in Frankfurt are serious about improving public education, then it would seem that more of them would accept our invitations to visit schools within Jefferson County. And I, for one, have offered that invitation several times, and no one has taken me up on it. And so I hear grand pronouncements on television, but no one comes along with me to really see what's happening inside of our buildings. And I think that would go a long way in fostering understanding so that the legislation that passes in Frankfurt actually responds to the needs within the district, not to people's petty gripes with the district.
All right, so let me respond to a few of that if I can. I'm in our school district schools all the time. I'd love to come to schools in your district if you want me to. I'd happy to go to any in your area. I go to schools in my area. I know of a lot of legislators that do. There's another one here right here today, Jared Bauman, whose son is at a public school, and so we're in public schools. And I take you up on your offer, and I hope we can do that soon. I would also know. I love it when non-Republicans tell me what a Republican idea is. It couldn't be further from the truth on this. The most crucial, the most core of the fundamental idea is local control. And Dr. Schull, you are a man of good meaning, no doubt about it. You've got a heart of gold, and I believe you want what's best for this community. There's no doubt about it. But let me tell you that Marty Polio, who's our superintendent, who I believe in as well. And by the way, the fact that he's the third one since the audit means that's even more evidence that we need a 10-year look-back audit. But Marty Polio couldn't make he couldn't go to every school in 1 year. There are 165 schools. You think he knows the name of all the assistant principals? Maybe all the principals, maybe not. You think he knows the assistant principals? You think he knows what's going on in Crosby and Lassiter and Brown and Manual and Valley and Moore and Iroquois? You think he does? Because he can't. It's not possible. And the most core of the principles of the Republican ideal is local control. And you can still have things. We passed the bill last year, 2 sessions ago, where you can cross jurisdictional lines. So we can make Manual, if you wanted to make Manual or Male or Moore, if you wanted to make that a cross-jurisdictional community, or even within one of the 3 school districts or 4 or 2 or however many we have, and somebody from outside that school district wants to go there, you can do that. We already do that. You can apply to go to South Odom. You can apply to go to Bullitt East right now if you want to, and you live in Jefferson County. So that's not a problem. So the size is our strength issue? I don't think so. I think the size is the problem. And part of the size is we have tremendous discipline issues. There were over 120 teachers who retired early last year, so they left before retirement. So I looked them up. There were about 23 in my district. I called 12 of them. I called them. So why'd you leave early? I thought what I was going to hear, because this is all I hear from the school board, is, there's not enough pay. That's not what they said. Not one of them said that. That was some of their secondary reasons. But every one of them that I called, and I didn't call all 23 of them, but I called 12 of them. Every one of them said, I'm leaving. Some of them in their 30s, some in their 40s. I'm leaving because I'm scared of the kids. And I know central office won't back me up. If somebody brings a gun into my classroom, they'll be back. If there's a big fight, if one says, F you, there's no repercussions. So that's one of the problems that we have, is we don't have a control. We're not even serious about it. Forget that we can't control it. We're not even serious about discipline issues. And that's the principal problem that we have on teacher retention. It just is. And the best thing, by the way, I also represent Odom and Shelby County. I represent 20% of Odom County and a few precincts in Shelby. And most of the people in Odom and almost everybody in Shelby that I represent, they're Louisvillians. They're us. They went to JCPS. They left for one reason: to get the hell out of JCPS. We want them back. We want them paying taxes here. We want their kids in our communities. We want them in our PTAs. But JCPS is running people out of our county, and we've got to do a better job. And I think the principal problem is our size, because it does enable us to take seriously the biggest problems that we have, which, by the way, we rarely talk about.
Okay. I'm going to stop right there. All right, Dr. Schull, please.
Yeah, so when you say that by dividing the district that we will be able to find solutions to our biggest problems, I've yet to hear how dividing the district will improve student achievement. That is not a part of this conversation. I've yet to hear how dividing the district will ensure that resources are divided equitably, as this board has just done, to ensure that our vulnerable students receive the most resources. I've yet to hear how dividing the district will produce more teachers I've yet to hear how dividing the district will produce the bus drivers that we need. Whether you divide the district or not, you're still going to have 65,000 students who need transportation to schools every day. How does dividing the district accomplish that? How does dividing the district help us to find a solution to discipline problems? Could it be that some of the people who choose to go to Oldham County and to other school districts bordering our city are doing so in order to outrun some of the diversity that is found in JCPS? Could it be that some of those same people who have attempted to run to Oldham County to avoid the diversity of JCPS find themselves having to come back to Jefferson County because Oldham County does not provide services to students with some of the conditions and some of the behavioral and mental concerns that some of our student population struggles with, and that we have services particular to their needs. So maybe some of what we see with people moving to Oldham County, supposedly for better schools, is not for better schools, but it is for their own particular reasons.
So,
Well, hold on. I think lodging that, I think saying that people are moving to Oldham County because they're racist, they want to get rid of diversity, is it's outrageous that somebody would say that. By the way, a lot of those are JCPS teachers. I have a lot of JCPS teachers that moved to Oldham County for the purpose of getting out of JCPS. So to just say that they're outrunning diversity, I think is outrageous and completely a defamation that I hope my friend will recall. Or maybe I heard it wrong, and if so, please explain that I have. Diversity is one of our most important assets in Jefferson County. There's no doubt about that. We have half of the African American students in Kentucky right here in Jefferson County. I'm proud of that. But you know what I'm not proud of? I'm not proud of the fact that 21% of our African Americans at JCPS read at grade level. That is outrageous. Why are we not talking about that? When JCPS comes to Frankfort, when Marty Polio comes to Frankfort, he talks about important issues. He talks about diversity and inclusion. Those are important, but those are secondary. The primary things are school safety. That's number one. We're not serious about school safety. I hope there's a question on about that. We are not serious about school safety. And academic achievement and performance is the second most important thing. And that's not on the list that I hear about when they come to Frankfort. 21% of our African Americans are reading on grade level. That's a red alarm event. These young men and women, they need the opportunities that my kids have. They need the opportunities to be the next governor, to have the next great business for Louisville. And at 21%, 1 out of 5 of our African-American kids at JCPS are not reading on grade level. We are not serious people. We're not serious people when we're having conversations, and that's not the principal thing. These young men and women deserve better, and I'm going to fight with everything I've got to bring it.
So with that, Dr. Schull, particularly if you can kind of respond to, what changes that are being pursued, or maybe some successes regarding addressing concerns around disciplinary issues and school safety. Can you kind of speak to that?
Right. Well, I appreciate Representative Nemes's passion. I would, though, that Representative Nemes would take that passion back to Frankfort and challenge the General Assembly to fully fund public education.
What does that mean? Tell me what that
Fully
means.
funding public education has been clearly articulated by the Rose decision, as you are well aware of, that says...
What's the number? What does it mean?
That says that the SEEK allotment should be sufficient to run public schools without local taxes.
Yeah,
that's what the Rose decision says,
so
which
what's the number
your
that-
body is governed by, and you all do not live up to it.
Well, the SEEK formula, which was created in the early 90s, by the way, says that the state dollars are measured against the federal dollars and the local dollars. We can talk about SEEK funding, and Dr. Schull, I'm 100% in favor of increasing SEEK dollars. We've raised it a little, not enough. But not including in the SEEK funding, by the way, is that we've inherited a completely underfunded pension system, which we are finally funding. We have since 2017, and we're on track, not where we need to be, but we're on track. And then not included in the numbers that come to JCPS or any other school district is the extra, after we pay for the number that's legally required. to fund the schools. The extra $500 million that we've put into state teacher pensions, that doesn't include law enforcement, everybody else. So we're doing as best we can to put money into our school systems. There's no doubt about that. And we can talk more about state versus local allocation. But we're talking here about the performance of JCPS, whose budget has went from $1.4 billion in 2018 to over $2 billion today.
May I finish?
Dollars are not, I didn't think I interrupted you, I apologize. Dollars are not the problem.
Yeah, so dollars are the problem because there is no way that you can have a robust public education system when you do not fully fund it. The reason why we are having a transportation crisis at this moment is because the General Assembly has not adequately funded education. They have not incentivized people who hold CDLs to be bus drivers. Instead, people who have CDLs are working for freight companies, they're working for UPS. Frankfurt could help fix the transportation problem immediately if they had the political will to do so. They don't. Now let's talk about the question. As it relates to safety, JCPS has fashioned its own police force. It has developed its own safety policies, and we've even gone further than what Frankfurt has insisted that we do in installing weapons detection systems, which will go even further to ensure that our students are kept safe. We have just rolled out a brand new curriculum in every single school in JCPS to ensure that every single school is aligned. So if you want to talk about student achievement, you can't leave out what has most recently been done. So what I'm hearing is complaints about a school board and a superintendent who is working overtime to implement solutions to problems that are being belatedly raised by the General Assembly. I think what we're asking for is time to fully implement the new measures that we have undertaken and to actually be able to empirically measure how they help us to achieve student achievement.
So splitting the school district helps the busing problem. Obviously, that's common sense. They don't have to drive as far if the district's not as large. They don't go all over the community.
Not based on your plan, because in order to achieve diversity in schools, in order to have
There'll be one
economic
very
and
large
racial diversity, you're going to have to transport students from across town. So how does that limit your transportation?
There'll be one large district. That's the one that would have to marry the west with the east, but the south can stand alone effectively, and then the middle can stand alone because of diversity issues. With respect to economics, that's easy, right? So all the taxpayers can send money directly to a local fund that then is divided out appropriately. It doesn't have to be that District 1 gets its own, District 2 gets its own, District 3 gets its own, because even if you get that right today, with growth patterns over 20 years, it will be wrong, and we do not want haves and have-nots. So there's an easy resolution to that particular issue. But let me suggest to you, this is not a belated, that was a nice sentence, but this is not belated criticism. We've been making this criticism forever, and so did a lot of Democrats when they had control, and Adam Edelin obviously was a Democrat as well, and a lot of his recommendations weren't made. Last year, we had 592 deadly weapons events in our schools, 592 deadly weapons events in our schools, not one expulsion. That, my friends, is not serious. It's not serious. Yes, just in the last 2 days, we've got an event on a bus that was going to Carruthers where two adults get on the bus and they fight, and that somebody maced everybody. They're at school right now. They're not at school. Butler had a massive brawl this morning. Yesterday, a young lady brought out a knife when there was a fight going on, and the blade of the knife was that big. So I'm not here to talk about that particular young lady, but I'm here to say 592 deadly weapon incidents in our schools last year. Not one expulsion. We're not serious about discipline. And when you talk to teachers, and this isn't just anecdotal, JCPS does a poll. And when they talk to teachers, they say their main problem is discipline in the classroom. That's what they say. And when you guys ask them, do you want armed SRO officers? This is not the Republican Party of Kentucky. This is JCPS. 82% of the teachers said, we want an armed SRO in our schools. They still don't do that. They won't do that. They said they can be around the campus, but they can't be in there. By the way, that even violates the law. We passed the law. They violated it. We passed it again. They violated it. We passed it again. They're still violating it, and they're not getting the job done. It's just simple. You want to provide the bus issues? That's not our principal concern, but it is a big concern. I think splitting the district helps that, but discipline also helps that. Those are just the facts.
Representative Nemes, so expel those children and send them where?
No, don't expel them all. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you're gonna have an event where somebody. Okay, I get. This is very complex, Dr. Schull. You know that, and I know that. We get it. But 0 expulsions is not the right way forward. I'm not saying everybody that brings one, if they bring it for defense, they should be handled. But I don't know if they should be expelled. I don't know where you'll send them. That's the problem. I agree. But what about the kids that didn't bring a gun to school? What about them? Do they not have an opportunity to be safe? Do you and I as parents not have the right to send our kids to school and know that they're not going to have a gun, 592 events last year, or a knife pulled on them? Don't they have the right? What about the rest of the kids? And also, this is parenting 101 in writ large when you're talking about a school district. But if I see you misbehave and nothing happens to you, Corey, I'm going to misbehave because I know every dog tests his chain. And I've seen you test the chain and nothing's happened, so I'm going to misbehave. It's not loving to that kid to do nothing, and it's not loving to the rest of the kids.
So you understand why we're installing weapons detection systems in schools?
That's right. None of them are I think that was your idea. Thank you for that.
Now, also, even if we did have SROs in every school,
right,
where would we get those law enforcement personnel?
Right. Okay. So look, all this is complex. I get it. You're not going to get them everywhere. But here's what you guys did. But I think it was before you.
So we did the best thing in order to accommodate.
No, you didn't. Just because you can't have them in all 165 schools doesn't mean you throw your hands up. For example, let me say, remind you. No, let me finish real quick. I think this was before you were in office. We had SROs in some schools, not all schools. We didn't have them in all schools. Marty Polio made a recommendation that we continue those contracts. 4 weeks after one stopped the school shooting in Valley High School. Nobody in here knows about it, probably. Not many. Google it. Don't take my word. Valley High School, school shooting, SRO. 4 weeks after an SRO stops a school shooting, this kid was suspended because he was watching mass shootings in school. Suspended. The next day or 2 days later, the SRO found him walking toward the school with a revolver and 50 cartridges. He got a big award for stopping a school shooting. SROs work. So what did JCPS School Board do over the recommendation of Marty Polio, who said we need to continue these contracts? They got rid of all the contracts, taking them out of the schools. Unbelievable. 4 weeks after they started. So you might not be able to have them.
That's not true.
It is true. You may not be able to have them. It is true. You may not be able to have it. It is true. The vote was 3-3.
I was there.
Yeah,
it was false.
That is true. Yes, it was. They were in 17 schools, and then after that vote, he made a recommendation to continue. I know it's a bad fact for you, but that's the truth.
It's not true. It is
true.
False. You are openly saying something that is absolutely not true.
Okay, so I know that we have a lot to cover there, but we'll have to put a pin in it for the moment. If we have time at the end, we'll circle back. But want to reserve the rest of our time, if we can, to get to as many audience questions. So with that, I'm going to kindly ask that we have succinct, sort of rapid fire type of responses, just so we can try to get to as many as we can. Elizabeth, go ahead.
JCPS has a 74% market share, which means approximately 34,000 eligible Jefferson County students are not using JCPS for various reasons, opting to pay tuition, which many cannot afford. What do you propose JCPS leaders do to entice, as a public benefit, more parents to choose JCPS?
So Dr. Schulfe, can maybe start with you, and then Representative Neves have a quick response.
I think that people make the best choices for their children. I don't know that it is the role of JCPS to try to entice parents to do anything. Our role is to ensure that we have strong, robust, excellent schools across this community. So I think parents have to make that what's best for them. I don't think public dollars ought to be used for private institutions. I think, but that choice where a child goes to school is for a parent.
Quickly.
The way to make parents want to send their kids to JCPS is make sure that the school is safe and it's educating the kids. That's pretty simple.
Okay, Lourdes, go ahead.
Okay, we're going to do a speed dating round right now, okay? So we have lots of questions, so I'm putting them together in topics. One of the big ones is transportation. I know that some people say, okay, let's divide it up and then it'll be less transportation, but other folks say, well, we need to make sure that it's equitable across the district, or across the geographic area, rather. Right now, preschool kids aren't even getting to school, and we're still waiting. Parents are not in the workforce and still waiting to get them in there. So the question is, what's the next gen effort for busing? I mean, do we just bus, for example, like in Chicago, only the ones that we are federally required to bus? Does everybody have to be bused? Are those conversations taking place?
So I think Representative Nemes, we know where you're at on this. So Dr. Scholl, if you could respond.
Those conversations are taking place and will continue to take place through the fall.
Okay, next one.
Okay. In terms of making up for classes, class time and test scores, there are a lot of questions about test scores. There are some data that shows that JCPS does spend more per pupil than other school districts, and sometimes even more than some private schools. Yet test scores are still not even close to where they should be theoretically. That the children miss 7 days of instructional time. Will those days be made up?
Dr. Scholl.
We are forgiving as many days as we can. As it relates to the comparison between public schools and private schools, I don't know that private schools take year-end assessments for us to actually have that data to compare.
Well, we have some data that we can compare, and I mean they take ACT. Thankfully, I think every student in Kentucky takes the ACT now, which is required. There are some exceptions, but it's generally required. I would note, and these are not, and I want to be fair about this, these are not apples to apples, okay? Because JCPS, as all public schools, have to take kids that private schools do not have to take. But you could send one kid to St. X and one kid to St. Margaret Mary for the price we pay for one kid to go to JCPS, which is over $20,000 a kid. That's about 15% higher than the average around Kentucky. Again, there's context there, but we spend about 15% more per student at JCPS than we do on average in Kentucky. And again, you could send two kids to private school for the price of one at JCPS.
Follow-up response.
Do they transport them to Trinity?
No, I don't know the answer to that because my kids don't go to Trinity.
They transport them to St. X.
Yeah, I don't. My kids don't go there. So I don't know.
Most private schools do not have transportation.
That's
so when we talk about
I think they do.
pupil spending,
My
well,
kids go to K through 8.
One thing we know is that in JCPS,
I don't know about Trinity because my
transport.
kids go to Manual. My two boys go to Manual, but St. Margaret Mary does. They have a lot of buses.
Okay, Lourdes, next question, please.
Okay. And then we have the question about the diversity question about JCPS and how it is important to have children from all walks of life because that's what the world is made up of.
Right.
So Representative Nemes, how would the next gen effort, JCPS, beta look to meet these requirements?
Well, certainly diversity of all kinds, especially racial diversity, is crucial. We have to keep that in mind. Anything we talk about, any plan we talk about. But the primary thing, even more important than racial diversity, as important as that is, and it is very important, is academic performance. For example, at Crosby Middle School, we had the most number of Title I kids in the entire county. And at least a couple years ago, when Dr. Kelly was the principal, I've not checked since then, we didn't get any Title I dollars because you don't get them unless there's a percentage of Title I kids. And so racial diversity, all diversity, but especially racial diversity, is extremely important. It has to be in any conversation we have. But it is not primary. What's primary is that white kids, black kids, all kids learn. And with 21%, it's not right. And we can do better and we must do better.
Next question, please.
I had several questions about security. And how would having security help with the lack of resources or underfunded after-school programs? How do you marry SROs with children being helped to feel wanted and welcomed?
They feel safe, period.
Yes.
Dr. Scholl.
every child does not feel safe with the presence of a police officer. There are students who have radically different experiences and have had very poor experiences with police officers. And they do not look at police officers and feel warm and fuzzy inside or feel safe. And so we have to take that into account.
And not a single person is saying that an LMPD full uniformed officer needs to be in our schools. Not a single person is saying that. In Lexington, they have multiple armed SROs in their schools, and they've had for years. We're talking about people who are integrated into the system, who can know what's going on with Jason, who can know Jason's a problem or Jason's going through a problem. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about armed, military style or even police style people hanging out in Miss Jones's third grade classroom. We're talking about people integrated with a polo on and khakis or whatever they wear that's integrated just like our teachers. So we're not talking about, the over militarization of our police or our schools.
I have another set of questions here on state funding for JCPS. And then the question is, obviously the state funding, but then also how do you address the disparity in affordable housing? How do you, is there funding the transportation funding? What more can we leverage? Now, is JCPS getting less than other districts?
Yes, they are. We're talking about per kid. What we're getting, we're more per kid overall that is spending on that student. But from the SEEK funding, there are SEEK losers because Jefferson County is wealthy compared to most areas. I have 4 districts. All 4 of them are what we call SEEK losers. They send more money than they get back. I don't like that. But Breathitt County has to have adequate schooling as well. And so we're trying to do better with that. I want to move more money back to Jefferson County, no doubt, because that's my home. But I want to note that there are 21 school districts across the country where there are 80,000 kids to 120,000 kids. And these numbers are from the National Center for Education Statistics. And of the 21 school districts, we're 6th in revenue received from the state. We're 1st on amount we spend on busing, and we're 3rd of amount we spend on administration. That's not priorities that need to be there. That's why we're going to have the audit.
Dr. Scholl,
Would you ask the question once more?
can you repeat the question, Lourdes?
Yes, of course. It was I had a big pile of questions about state funding going to JCPS and funding for affordable housing, for funding for wraparound services, not just for education purposes, perhaps even out some of the questions about funding. And then also how, looking ahead, what kind of funding do you feel, Dr. Scholl, would we need in JCPS to, you say that we don't have adequate funding. What is adequate funding? Can you give us a number?
For the first part of your question, yes. We understand the issues. Every issue that we see in Jefferson County Public Schools is a microcosm of community issues. When you have a community with all of the issues that Louisville has, you cannot expect the school system to not be impacted by those concerns, those issues. And so, yes, I do think that funding, the list that you spoke about, will go a long way to help them to even things out. As it relates to what is adequate funding, it is the General Assembly doing what they are constitutionally bound to do. It is ensuring that the SEEK allotment that is owed to Jefferson County is allotted to Jefferson County. It is ensuring that the SEEK allotment accounts for inflation. It is ensuring that we incentivize those positions that we know fall into the category of shortages: bus drivers, teachers. And so, but I think the first thing that the General Assembly needs to do is get the SEEK allotment right.
And SEEK funding is not the only way we fund our public schools. When you include pension funding for teachers, our funding from the state far outstrips inflation. I wish we didn't have to put so much money in pensions, but we do, because for 20 years they didn't take it seriously. With respect to the affordable housing issue, you couldn't be anywhere closer. You're exactly on point. Another thing that we're doing in this community right now, and if you don't know about it, I think you need to pay attention to this commission, is we've got a commission looking at Merger 2.0. What have we done right? What could we do better? And one of the things that we're really trying to focus on is how do we get affordable housing to our people, not just affordable housing so people can live in it. Dr. Scholl, as you know, that's important. We have, I think, 30,000 units that we need. But also, we want our kids, yours and mine, that you represent, that I represent all over the community, we want them to get into ownership, because that's how you transfer wealth. So we don't only need to get affordable housing. We need that in droves. We need people to be able to buy so they can have something of their own. When they have something of their own, they can transfer wealth, but they can also say, this is mine. This community is mine. I've got a stake in this. My money's in this. That's what we need, and we're trying to get that done. These are devilishly difficult things, and I know your job, Doctor, is devilishly difficult as well. My job is to keep pushing, and that's what I'm going to do.
So Dr. Scholl, just to follow up on sort of local revenue. So that is sort of in the purview of JCPS, School Board of Education. You will have the ability to essentially tax So at the local level, there was some chatter, maybe as recent as spring or summer, that you all would explore additional property tax increases to increase revenue. Are there interests to revisit that? I'll also mention, the previous audit under a former auditor, Adam Edlin, he was critical of prior leadership about maybe not realizing additional tax revenue opportunities. So can you kind of speak to that, maybe the attitude of the board moving forward regarding local revenue?
The attitude toward the board concerning local revenue, 60% of JCPS's budget comes from local taxes, the local tax base. So there is nothing on the floor now to increase taxes. That I don't know what could happen tomorrow. I can only speak for what I know at this moment. But we're committed to ensuring that we resource our schools, that we flood the schools in the choice zones with resources that they need in order to educate our most vulnerable population.
Lourdes?
Okay. Then there's another pile of questions about teachers and morale. How do you build support for the system and our teachers? What do we do to get more parental involvement? Are there any high-level discussions about behavioral issues? Because again, we hear that the teachers feel under siege in some ways and do not feel support from the back office. What has been your viewpoint of that? How do we encourage more of a community discussion around parental involvement? And then also, how do we back and support teachers in the discipline areas?
So teacher morale and parental involvement. Dr. Scholl?
Right. As I understand teacher morale, our teachers want to feel supported. They want to be paid a wage that responds to their level of professionalism. They also don't want to constantly face onslaughts from legislation in Frankfurt that calls into question their profession. I think as it relates to conversations encouraging more parental involvement, that's a complicated issue. There is not one thing that can be done. I think that we have to encourage sororities and fraternities and churches and all types of social networks to get involved, and yes, to encourage parents to be involved, but to really invoke that African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. And so we have a lot of children in our village called Louisville, but I don't know that all of the village, the community members, the village members are really doing their part to pick up some of the slack that is left by parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs, by parents, single parents who may have 3 or 4 children that they're juggling, of volunteering in schools and reading to those 2nd and 3rd graders, which is something that teachers appreciate very much so. So I think there's a lot that we can do to encourage parental involvement and also community-wide involvement.
And Lourdes, we don't have to speculate. Just JCPS surveys their teachers. Just read the surveys. It's school discipline. That's what it is. We can put pretty words on things if you want to. But the teachers speak. They speak loudly. And this isn't anecdotal. This is a survey JCPS gives. They do it by school. And it's classroom malfunction. It's classroom discipline. It's classroom violence. That's what it is. And it's also bus violence.
In 2019, I believe it was, our district was roundly criticized for disproportionality in the way that discipline was implemented, for what, how children were disciplined. We understand that there are wider community and state issues about what happens to children who become engaged with the law. When you talk about expelling children, you still have to ask, where do those children go? Do those children end up on the streets? Are they the ones stealing cars? Are they the ones who become further justice involved? Are we creating another problem by simply we can't do away with kids. We shouldn't want to do away with kids.
That's right.
And legally, JCPS has a responsibility to educate every child in this community. And so it's a complicated issue, and it's one that we try to use a variety of approaches in order to deal with.
Yeah, it's very difficult. There's no doubt about that. And kids come from brokenness, just like we all do in some ways. I understand that completely. But let me tell you what Marty Polio did when he became the principal at Doss. Here's a guy who knew what he was supposed to do, and he told me this personally. He told the superintendent at the time, he said, "Don't hold the rules against me because I'm going to have a lot of suspensions. I'm going to take control of this school." And that's what Marty Polio did. Now, he's been restricted by the federal government. I don't think by the state. If it is, let me know. We're going to remove that barrier. But he's been restricted by the state, by the federal government from doing a lot of things. But Marty Polio knows what to do because he did it at Doss. But for whatever reason, it's not happening more globally in our school district. You want to get control of a district, you got to get control of the kids. You have to say to me, you misbehave, you're going to be accountable. But the best thing about that is Corey will see me get held accountable, and then he's going to behave. And if he doesn't, then he's going to be held accountable. And what do we do with the kid? We've got to have wraparound services, no doubt about that, Dr. Scholl, no doubt. But he's not coming back to that classroom until he behaves. That's the principal thing that we're not getting right.
I think that's a wonderful thing, but make sure that the previous question merges with the most immediate question, and that is, if you don't have parental engagement and you do what Marty Polio did 25 years ago and suspend students.
I think it was like 12 years ago.
Or 12 years ago. Where are those students going? Are they going to homes where there is no supervision? Does that then create a larger community issue? And I would submit that the answer to that is yes. I submit it's the answer to that because I have seen students who were indeed suspended, who did go out and steal a car, who ended up in a fatal accident, and whose funeral was at the Portland Memorial Baptist Church. Now, that happened maybe 18 months ago. So I think as we talk about suspending kids and expelling kids, that sounds very, very simple. Sounds very, very easy. It only works when on the other side of that suspension is parents, grandparents, somebody who can then hold that child accountable and also ensure that that child does not become a menace to society.
I agree with what you've said, but I'm going to add the menace to the society is 592 deadly weapons. This isn't speculation. 592 deadly weapons coming to our schools last year. Praise God that we haven't had a shooting. That's the menace to society. It's coming that we're going to have an incident that's bigger than what we've already had.
I agree
if we don't take it seriously, which we are not.
I agree with you. Praise God that we did not have any incidences related to those weapons. But why are students bringing weapons?
Because they know there's no consequence.
No, they're bringing weapons because they don't feel safe in community. And when people don't feel safe in community,
yes.
They take their safety into their own hands.
And
that's not a JCPS problem.
Well, and that's why I'm so thankful for what you've done on the metal detector. Thank you for that. You were the leader of that. Thank you for that. But that is not the overall. That's not a panacea. We've got to do more, and the more is if you bring a gun to school, you're gone for a year. We'll try to get your wraparound. You can't come back.
But gone where?
Well,
and that's where the community and
not
the
to school.
state.
Not to school.
But where do they go? They don't disappear.
We certainly have to try to get the wraparound, Corey, but you can't have them back in school because of two reasons. Number one, the other kids are going to see that, and they're going to bring in, because they're going to feel either fearful or bold, whatever, they're going to bring guns to school, and we're going to have an incident. So we're worried about social problems. No doubt, I agree. 592 is a real and present danger now.
So thank you to our board members for collecting questions. I want to end on a high note. And so Representative Nemes, as you may know, the media, social media does not always report, consensus building and opportunities where we actually come together and agree and get something done. So what is one success or accomplishment of JCPS that you are proud of?
Oh, there's a lot of successes at JCPS that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of the work that we've done on building new schools. There are very few new schools, but there are some. It's the first time. Thank you guys for that. James, thank you for that. You're my school board member, and I think we're going to build even more. I'm proud of that because when you have nice places that people want to be at, they feel like they're not going to an institution. They feel open. I think I'm very proud of that. There's a ton of things I'm proud of, but I think the buildings are probably the most pressing issue.
And Dr. Scholl, I'm going to ask the same of you. The legislature, Frankfurt State Government, what's one thing that you're proud of in support of JCPS?
I'm proud of being able to collaborate with Frankfurt last year on the bill that they passed concerning literacy, which has gone a long way in helping us to ensure that our youngsters are excelling in literacy.
On behalf of Louisville Forum, thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you.